My family mocked me in court, loud and proud, until the silence hit. One file, one motion, one salute. That moment shattered everything they built on greed and deceit. They thought I was gone, forgotten, powerless. But when the Marines saluted me, they weren't just honoring a soldier, they were honoring the truth, and truth always wins. I didn't cry at the funeral, not because I didn't feel anything, but because I refused to give them that power. When I walked through the church doors, every pair of eyes either looked away or stared straight through me, like I was a ghost. Not a daughter, not a Marine, just an inconvenience they thought would never come back. No one saved me a seat. They filled the pews with carefully chosen people, people who smiled for pictures and signed checks but never showed up when my grandfather was in the hospital. They came to be seen. I came because he meant something. I stood in the back, alone in my dress blues. Not a wrinkle, not a thread out of place, hair tight, chin up. That uniform had seen desert blood, enemy fire, and nights so cold I thought my bones would shatter. But this room was colder than any battlefield. My mother didn't turn around. Dean, my brother, looked over his shoulder, smirked, and whispered something to his wife. She laughed like this was a joke, like I was the punchline. The pastor listed names, surviving children, grandchildren, godchildren, golf buddies. He read them like a grocery list. My name never came. They buried the man who raised me as if I never existed. Like 24 years of service, sacrifice, and silence weren't enough to earn a single mention. Like the only granddaughter who actually knew how he took his coffee, or which medals he kept in the locked drawer, me, wasn't even worth a line in the program. But they made a mistake. They thought they had already won. That cutting me out of the will, out of the ceremony, out of the story, would erase me. What they didn't know was that I had already broken into the safe. I had already found the real will. His will. The one they never wanted to see the light of day. The one with my name on every page. So I stood there, silent, unmoving. I didn't flinch when they prayed. I didn't bow my head. I kept my eyes open, not out of disrespect for the dead, but because I wanted the living to know I wasn't here for peace. I was here for war. They tried to write me out of his legacy, but I came back with receipts. Next, in a cabin buried deep in pinewood silence, I found what they wanted hidden forever. His final words, his real will, and the evidence that would tear their version of the truth apart, line by line. It was 3 weeks after the funeral when I got the call. Block number. A man's voice, low, raspy. "It's about your grandfather. You'll want to come to the cabin." No address, no name, just a click. But I knew exactly where he meant. The old pine cabin tucked deep past the logging roads, where Grandpa taught me how to shoot, fish, and keep secrets. The drive up felt like peeling off skin. Every tree, every shadow, carried the weight of something unfinished. The silence was so thick I didn't dare breathe too hard. The door was unlocked. That alone told me something was off. He always locked everything, even when he was just stepping out to get firewood. Inside, dust floated through shafts of late afternoon light. The air smelled like cedar and gun oil. I didn't touch anything. Not until I saw the envelope, propped neatly on the mantel. My name, in his handwriting. All caps, firm strokes. The kind of script that once commanded a room. The second I picked it up, my legs went weak. I didn't read it there. I walked outside, sat on the edge of the porch where he used to drink black coffee and say nothing for hours. I broke the seal with shaking hands and read his final words to me. "If you're reading this, it means they've already lied, and they think they've won. But they don't know you, kid. You're quiet, But you see everything. You've always seen everything. And that's why I trust you with what I couldn't trust anyone else. The letter was short, but every line carved something open in me. He knew. He knew what they'd do. And he planned for it. He told me where to look. Beneath the floorboards in the back room, under the old wolfskin rug. Said the safe was still there, and I'd know the code. I did. The same 6 digits he used to carve into wood when I was a kid. His badge number. The lock clicked open. Inside was a navy blue folder. No labels, no fluff. Just one document. The real will. Notarized, stamped, dated 3 months before his last hospital stay. It was clear. Direct. Dean and my mother got a mention. Some furniture, old photos, maybe a coin collection. But everything else? The land, the pension, the stocks. All of it was in my name. To the only one who ever showed up without being asked. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't feel vindicated. Not yet. Because something didn't add up. 3 days after the funeral, Dean had called a lawyer. Told me there was a will, but it was vague. Split evenly. Nothing left but sentiment. He lied. But more than that, someone forged a new will. And they filed it. Which meant I wasn't just up against family now. I was up against something bigger. Dirtier. Legal. At the bottom of the safe was a flash drive. I hadn't seen it until the light hit it just right. When I plugged it in that night, my screen lit up with something I never expected. A video. And in it, my grandfather's voice, warning me about everything. They laughed when I walked into the attorney's office that Monday morning. Dean leaned back in his chair like it was his father's throne. My mother sipped her coffee like she was the grieving widow of a man she hadn't visited in 5 years. They wore black like they were still in mourning, but their smiles were too wide, too smug. "Didn't expect you to show up," Dean muttered, loud enough for the whole room to hear. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. My uniform did the talking. Dress blues, medal on the left, my hair in a perfect bun, not a speck of dust on my shoes. I sat down across from them without blinking, without smiling, without giving them the satisfaction of a single reaction. I'd already watched the video 3 times before I came. Grandpa's voice, rasping but sharp, laid it all out. Who had lied, who had forged documents, who had made sure I was left out. He even named the notary they paid off. It wasn't just betrayal, it was orchestration. They knew I was overseas. They knew I wouldn't be able to contest anything from a combat zone. That's why they moved fast. Filed paperwork, claimed ignorance, buried the truth under fake signatures and sealed envelopes. But Grandpa had been smarter than all of them, and so was I. Every conversation since the funeral, I recorded it. Every whisper, every smug confession, every loose comment they made in passing. I let them talk. I let them mock me. I let them think they'd won. When Dean bragged to a friend on the phone about locking down the house before the soldier girl came sniffing around, I was there, in the hallway, voice memo running. When my mother told her bridge club she had taken care of everything, I was parked across the street, camera lens trained on the open window. I didn't get mad. I got quiet. And when you get quiet, people forget to lie. I brought it all to the lawyer. A flash drive. A folder. The original will. No tears. No pleas. Just evidence. Their attorney blanched. The smirk on Dean's face disappeared in a blink. My mother reached for her pearls like they might shield her from consequence. But this wasn't about theatrics anymore. This was about fact. About paper trails. About perjury. I watched them squirm, watched the panic bloom behind their eyes. They didn't speak. For the first time since the funeral, they had nothing to say. I had them. The lawyer looked at me. Not with pity, not even with respect, but with recognition, because I hadn't come to ask. I'd come to claim. And as the silence thickened, I realized something. This wasn't just revenge. It was reclamation. Reclaiming my name, my blood, and the truth they tried so hard to bury. At the bottom of the folder was one last note. Not from Grandpa, but from the notary. One who had changed sides after learning the truth. With it, a second signature. Sealed, notarized, and strong enough to set the entire courtroom on fire. It was the sound of boots, not the gavel, not the judge, not even Dean's voice. Just that steady rhythm of 4 sets, leather on marble, measured, intentional. The courtroom door opened. 4 Marines entered in full dress blues, shoulders squared, eyes forward, every thread in place. The room went silent. My brother stiffened. My mother clutched her purse like it could protect her from what was coming. The judge looked up. Is this a presentation? I didn't turn. I didn't flinch. I didn't need to. These weren't strangers. They were mine. Brothers in arms who knew what silence in war meant. Who knew that when I don't speak, it's because I'm listening, calculating. We didn't smile. We saluted. And the moment I returned that salute, something shifted. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was final. Because the courtroom no longer belonged to them. It belonged to me. Not because I raised my voice, but because the truth had just walked in. The lead Marine stepped forward. Your Honor, he said, calm and firm. We've been asked to deliver this. It's from the late Mr. Harlan Jennings. Dean made a sound, like he'd swallowed a lie and it had turned to glass. The envelope was hand-addressed, signed, dated, 2 weeks before the stroke. Inside, a letter. My grandfather's last direct order. It listed everything. Assets, instructions, names. It honored my service and exposed theirs. Every lie, every forged signature, every dirty whisper they thought would stay buried. It wasn't sentimental. It was tactical. His final line was short. Silence is not surrender. She was always meant to lead. The judge read it twice, folded it slowly. This will be entered into record. No explosion, no outrage, just silence. Dean couldn't meet my eyes. My mother didn't breathe. Because that letter didn't just bring clarity. It brought judgment. From a man they couldn't manipulate. From a legacy they never deserved. And in that moment, standing there in my blues, with my back straight and my fists unclenched, I realized something. I didn't need to fight them. The truth had done it for me. 3 days later, I unlocked the house they tried to erase me from. And on the counter, wrapped in cloth, was a box. Inside, a photo, a silver key, and a name I hadn't heard since childhood. One they buried, but he had never forgotten. I didn't torch the house. I didn't scream. I didn't stand in the middle of the living room and demand apologies. I just walked through each room like it was a battlefield I'd already won. There was dust on the mantel where his medals used to sit. Fingerprints on the safe he thought they'd never find. Photographs still framed, but they had carefully cropped me out. They erased me in print, but not in presence. Because now I held the deed, the trust, the letters, the truth. I spent the first week in silence. I didn't call anyone. I pulled down every photo they left hanging and boxed them up like evidence. There was no comfort in revenge, only clarity. It wasn't about winning. It was about removing them from the narrative they tried to steal. Forgiveness was never part of the plan. Not because I couldn't, but because they'd never asked. They wanted to bury me twice, once at the funeral and again in court. And when that failed, they went quiet. Too quiet. So I rebuilt, on my own terms. I tore up the rose bushes my mother planted for appearances and replaced them with native pines. I cleared out the office Dean had turned into his legacy suite and converted it into a reading room with nothing but one chair, one lamp, and a photo of my grandfather, the real version. The man who taught me that silence was never weakness. It was calculation. I found the piano he bought for me when I was 9, still intact, even though they told me they sold it. The keys were stiff, the sound uneven, but when I played, it didn't matter. Each note felt like a brick being laid beneath my feet. Each song a wall, a roof, a foundation that belonged to me. There were days I sat in the backyard and said nothing for hours, not because I was lost, but because I was home. Finally. People talk a lot about closure like it's some final scene, a letter, a cry, a clean break. But mine came in pieces, in every drawer I reclaimed, every corner I dusted, every locked cabinet I opened with the keys they never knew I had. I didn't burn the bridge. I bought the land it sat on. And then I built something they couldn't enter. Not because I locked them out, but because they no longer recognized the woman inside. No longer the daughter they dismissed. No longer the Marine they mocked. No longer the silence they misunderstood. I didn't forgive. I remembered. And that was enough. They thought cutting me out would destroy me, that by erasing my name from the will, the obituary, the memories, they could rewrite history. But what they never understood is this: some of us don't need to be welcomed back. We walk in, reclaim what's ours, and rebuild without asking permission. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I watched. I planned. I executed. And in the end, I didn't get revenge. I got the truth. And the truth, when delivered with precision, is louder than any courtroom outburst, stronger than any forged paper, and colder than any betrayal. I didn't just win back my place in the family story. I rewrote the ending. One where I didn't forgive. I simply outgrew everything they used to keep me small. The deepest lesson in this story? You don't owe anyone a performance just to earn your worth. Silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk into the room with your head high, say nothing, and let the truth speak for itself. If someone's trying to erase your voice, don't fight for a seat at their table. Build your own and let them watch from a distance. Have you ever had to prove your worth in silence when no one believed in you? Drop a comment below and share your story. You never know who might be inspired just by hearing how you stood your ground. And if this story made you feel seen, even just for a moment, consider subscribing to this channel. We share stories that cut deep, heal stronger, and remind you that quiet strength is still strength. One click might be small, but your support tells us these stories matter, and that keeps us going. Thanks for hearing what most chose to ignore. The truth needed someone to witness it, and that someone was you.